Hi. So, we've already talked about coordination, and today we're going to move on to a slightly more complicated topic, but very well connected to it, and that is the concept of subordination. So, coordination, remember, is the connection of things with no set rhetoric between them. They just fit together because you happen to put them together. Subordination is putting things together in a way that implies some kind of a logical or rational connection, some kind of an order to them. And if you look at them, you can say, I see why they are there. I see how they connect to one another. I'm going to jump into a metaphor to explain this to you right now. Metaphors don't work for everybody. Don't worry if this doesn't click for you. But for me, I often understand things if you give me a strange example that somehow works. Okay, so we're going to talk about your kitchen. Now, if you're like most people, you go into your kitchen and it's generally to the right of the sink or to the left of the sink or over on the other side of the kitchen. All the way down on the bottom, there's this bottom drawer. And you pull that bottom drawer out there and what's in it? Everything. Everything that you could think of that didn't have any place else to go. There's a rusty screwdriver. There are 5 dead AA batteries. There's a nut and a bolt from your IKEA furniture and a bunch of Allen wrenches and who knows what else is in there. Why is it there? Because that's the drawer that everything goes into there. And you can use your and all you want. I've got a blown fuse from the air conditioner, and I've got a picture of my grandmother, and all these things in there, old refrigerator magnets. It's all there in that bottom drawer. That's a drawer that uses coordination. Things are just added into it. Now, subordination, please don't think I'm weird for this. I am weird, but please don't think that I'm a completely what's the word I'm looking for? Compulsive person? Alright, but silverware drawers. I'm bothered when silverware drawers don't use proper subordination. If I look at the dividers in a silverware drawer, they almost always go longest, and then they get shorter as you go over to the left, and then there's one on the bottom. Alright, and when I look at those, I'm always going to go knives, big forks, small forks, big spoons, small spoons. Alright? That's my sense of subordination in the silverware drawer. Now you might go knives, big forks, big spoons, small forks, small spoons. That makes sense too. There's an argument for that. That makes perfect sense. The way we arrange our kitchen is an argument. It's a way that we subordinate things. It's the way we put things together, right? So I've been in kitchens where things are arranged based on what you do. Baking things are in one place, and they're coordinated because they're used to bake. Other things are in other places. In my mom's kitchen, and I thought this was just brilliant, my mom put all of the metal things in one place, all of the glass things in another place, and all the plastic things in another place. That's what coordinated them together, right? So that's coordination in action. Subordination, well, subordination means if she's putting the Tupperware in there, she's putting the biggest one first, and the smaller one, and the smaller one, and the smaller one, because that's how they stack. If you put the small one at the bottom, you're in trouble. They're not going to fit. So that's my long metaphorical description of what subordination does. Subordination puts things in a certain order because it makes sense to put them in that order, and if you don't put them in that order, things aren't going to work well. So that's subordination. Now, subordination, what it does is it links phrases and clauses with rhetorical connection words, which we can also call conjunctions. Conjunctions include coordinators or subordinators. It's just a big word. I don't use it that often. The only reason I really like using the word conjunction, some of you may have already guessed at this, although I'm probably the only one here who's old enough to remember this. You ready? Let's see if I can find it. Come on.
Junction, junction, what's your function?
Hook
Hooking up words and phrases and clauses.
Conjunction, junction, how's that function?
I got 3 favorite cars that get most of my job done.
Conjunction, junction, what's their function?
I got and, but, and or. They'll get you pretty far. And that's an additive like this and that. But that's sort of the opposite. Not this, but that. And then there's or. O-R. When you have a choice like this or that. And, but, and or get you pretty far.
Conjunction, junction, what's your function?
Hooking up 2 boxcars and making them run right. Milk and honey, bread and butter, peas and rice.
Hey, that's nice.
Dirty but happy, digging and scratching, losing
Okay, I
your
think you
shoe
get
and
the
a
idea.
button
Let me
or
skip
2.
forward and
He'd
show you
pull it on
something here.
the mountains or down to the seas. You should always say thank you or at
Right
least
here.
say please.
Conjunction, junction, what's your function?
Hooking up words and phrases and clauses in complex sentences like.
Complex sentences.
In the mornings when I'm usually wide awake, I love to take a walk through the gardens and down by the lake where I often see a duck and a drake. And I wonder as I walk by just what they'd say if they could speak. Although I know that's an absurd thought.
Conjunction, junction.
All right. Did you see what happened there? I think it's fascinating that when they're talking about conjunctions, specifically coordinators, they give you example after example after example. I cut out about half of it, and they just keep going away with it, right? And you're like, okay, I get the point, but yeah, you feel pretty good about your coordinators. When they get to subordinators, which are the complex sentences, what do? They throw this long sentence at you that sounds like it was written by William Faulkner. It just goes and goes and goes and goes, and it doesn't make any sense at all, and they never explain it. They never explain anything about subordination. Why is that? Well, it's because of the audience. Now, and, or, and but will get you pretty far. How far? Probably all the way through 6th grade. Maybe even further than that. And this was a show that was intended for kids in elementary school. But we're moving forward and we're saying, okay, where are you? Well, you're in college. And in college, you need to get further than you can get with and, but, and or. So, let's start looking at the kinds of words that they were using in that example. There were a lot of ifs and whens and all those, and those are the subordinator words. Okay? All right, let's move on to another concept here, because you may be a little, I don't know, alarmed by this talk about words and phrases and clauses. Let's talk about words and phrases and clauses. So a word, one single unit of meaning. That's all. Okay? So a word is a single unit of meaning. It's just one thing that sits there all by itself, and you all know that definition. Words are not scary. All right. Phrases, a phrase, that's a little more scary because you have to know a complex definition of what a phrase is. A phrase is several words which work together to make some sort of meaning, but they can't stand on their own. So there are many different kinds of phrases, but all you need to know about them, I'm not going to go into adjectival phrases and things like that, that's nerdy grammar. All you need to know is they can't stand on their own as sentences because they're missing parts. They're missing things that would make them a complete sentence. So if I were to say to you, if we were to spend a week in Seattle, and you're like, what? What? If we were to spend a week in Seattle, something is definitely missing. Now, what's the conjunction? What's the subordinator there? It's the word if. If I take that word away, what do I have? We were to spend a week in Seattle, something's missing, right? That's not a sentence. We were to spend a week in Seattle. No, it doesn't work. Okay, next one. After we watch this video, what? After we watch this video, what? Okay, take away the after, which is the subordinator, and we get, we watch this video. That makes perfect sense if you're a caveman, right? But we're not cavemen. So, we watch this video is a clause. Pardon me, a phrase. Okay, so we watch this video as a phrase. It's incomplete. It's missing some of the things that it needs. Okay, and this last one, sometimes during dinner, again, Something's missing. Sometimes during dinner, what? We'll take away sometimes. During dinner, right, nothing going on there. So those are all phrases. They stand there by themselves as part of the sentence. They would make sense if you had the rest of the sentence, but by themselves, they don't work at all. Next, we go on to clauses. Clauses, they're a lot like phrases. There's several words which work together to make some sort of meaning, and they could stand on their own, if not for the addition of a word that makes them dependent or subordinate. So you get it? They're like a phrase in that they don't stand on their own, but if you take away the subordinating word, if you take that word away, they are complete sentences. When Bob used to live in Odessa, what, right? It's incomplete. Take away the when. Bob used to live in Odessa. That feels good, right? Bob used to live in Odessa. That makes sense. Okay, after I bought my second house. What? Okay? I bought my second house. That's a complete sentence. So that ends up being a clause. And then a Lyle Lovett quote here. If I had a boat. If I had a boat, then what? Well, if he had a boat, he'd go out on the ocean. But if I take away the if, the phrase is, I had a boat. I've had several boats, right? And I feel perfectly okay with that clause. I had a boat. It makes me feel like there's nothing missing there, like we're complete. Okay, so let's move on to what's with all this grammar, right? You've told me you're not very good at grammar. I mean, I've told you I'm not very good at grammar. I've told you I don't really like grammar that much. And here I am talking to you about phrases and clauses. Why? Well, I do find that a lot of what we're taught about grammar is not very useful at all. And grammar has to be useful. But I also think that you already know things about phrases and clauses, and I think the things that you already know about phrases and clauses might be harmful. I think you may have residual information from how other teachers reacted to your writing that may make you a worse writer. And again, this goes back to what we were saying about the conjunction junction. In elementary school, you can't teach people to do things that are incredibly complex. Sometimes not even in middle school or high school. And so what we try to do is we look for the simple things that we can address. So, phrases. You have probably been criticized for using phrases incorrectly. So here's an example. You may have written something like this. George was justified in killing Lenny. Period. At the end of Mice and Men. Period. Right? It's like, oh, that second sentence is incomplete. But you can see if you put the two together, you'd have a complex sentence. Here's probably what happened, though, if you wrote that. George was justified in killing Lenny. Period. At the end of Mice and Men. And your teacher said, no! Of Mice and Men! At the end of Mice and Men, that's a fragment! And they circled it and wrote frag or something like that over in the corner, and they made you feel bad. And what you've got there is a complete idea. It's just that you used a period instead of a comma. If I take away the comma and I say, George was justified in killing Lenny, comma, at the end of Mice and Men, and I don't even need a comma there. George was justified in killing Lenny at the end of Mice and Men. That's a perfectly good sentence. It's complex. Okay, you've also probably been criticized for using clauses incorrectly. So again, talking about Of Mice and Men, I don't know if you've read it or not, a lot of people have. So, you may have written something like this. Lenny didn't mean any harm, but that doesn't matter. It's a nice, complex sentence, right? It even has a coordinator in it. He didn't mean any harm, but that doesn't matter, period. Now, I've already done my coordination, and I'm going to go, uh-oh, now I want to put because in there. But I already coordinated it, and it's getting clunky, so you can separate it out. Lenny didn't mean any harm, but that doesn't matter, because he killed Candace Brown. All right? The second sentence has everything it needs to be a sentence, right? He killed Candace Brown. Yes, that's a sentence. But you put the because at the beginning, it's not a sentence anymore. So the extra because makes it into a clause. Why am I telling you this? Because I want you to know something. Both of these, both incomplete sentences because of a phrase used incorrectly, or incomplete sentences because of a clause used incorrectly, these are signs that you are thinking and growing as a writer. Mina Shaughnessy, who's one of my favorite theorists of composition, she says these are positive errors. It's good that you're doing this. So, for these things you should be encouraged instead of corrected. You're trying to do something, you didn't do it as well as you could have, but you tried. Right? Imagine what life would be like if everybody expected you to do everything perfectly when you were learning things, right? So here you are 8 months old, and you're crawling, happily crawling around, and your dad's in there watching you, and you get up on your feet, and you take 2 steps, and you fall flat on your face. Is your dad going to say, "What? You fell on your face! You idiot! Keep crawling! Just crawl!" You know, you're never going to learn how to walk if somebody tells you, "Don't ever fall down," or "I get angry when you fall down." That's terrible. Okay, and again, I can't guarantee that this happened to you. But I think we all have scars in terms of how we write. I think we all have issues that come across to us because of how we've been trained and how other people have addressed us in our writing and in our thinking. So, again, remember that idea. Not everything that you do that is grammatically incorrect is a bad sign. A lot of the things that we do that technically are mistakes are good mistakes, and we need to keep trying to do them. All right, so that's why I'm doing all this grammar. So, how do we connect sentences correctly? Well, connecting phrases and clauses is as simple as using conjunctions, which are coordinators and subordinators. And the coordinators provide a connection between parts of a sentence that is always grammatical, right? Coordinator is always grammatical. It always makes sense. But sometimes it's non-rhetorical. Not always, but sometimes it's non-rhetorical. Remember I talked about your junk drawer, right? Your junk drawer in there is, you look in there and it's like, why is it in there? Well, it may not belong in there, but it is in there. Like if you look down there and you find there's your wedding ring in the bottom drawer in the kitchen. Well, it doesn't make sense rhetorically. It doesn't really belong there. But grammatically, somebody put it in there, so it is in there. And that's what I mean by the difference between grammar and rhetoric. Grammar is just saying it fits in there, so we can put it there. Rhetoric is saying, is that where it belongs, or should it be someplace else? Okay, you know all the coordinators, right? Because there are only 7 of them. You want to look at a list of subordinators? Let's take a look. Ah! There's too many, right? And that's not all of them. That's about 5% of them, if even that. Whoever, whomever, whenever, since, whatever, because, while, after, although, though, soon, who, whom, and so on. And it's like, oh my God, make it stop. So why are there so many? Why do we have so many of these subordinators? There are literally hundreds of subordinators, and each of them sets up some sort of condition under which the 2 parts of the sentence are connected. So if you look on the internet, all you can ever find is, what are the common subordinators, right? And they're if, when, because, since, after, then. And what they're doing is they're setting up some kind of a condition for linking 2 ideas. If I had a boat, I'd go out on the ocean. Let's see. When Josie comes home, it's so good. Sorry, Steely Dan lyrics. Because, what's a good because? Jesus loves me. This I know, because the Bible tells me so, right? It's connecting 2 ideas. Since you've been gone, I cry every night. All right? Again, linking 2 things, putting one after the other. Since, right, this happened, and now I'm doing this. After. I'll wash the dishes after I'm done recording this video, okay? And then there's then, right? I have to do this, then I can do that. Okay? These are common ones. Now, I just wanted to play around with this little, nobody does this, but there are less common subordinators that you'll also use, and I don't know if you use all of these, I'm just fascinated by them, subsequently is a subordinator. Nevertheless, or nonetheless, those are subordinators. Provided that, excepting, in case. All of these are subordinators. And again, you can see how you have an idea. Like, I always keep a fire extinguisher in my VW bus in case the banshees come and steal my soul. No, that doesn't work, right? In case it catches on fire, right? Accepting. Every movie that Nicolas Cage was in has been good, accepting all of them, sorry. But you see how this works, right? I got an idea, and I've got another idea that sort of fits inside of that. It's smaller than that idea. This is how we work with subordinators. Okay. Now, this, it's kind of one of those things my algebra teacher used to do, where he would say, now let's talk about something complicated for all those who are following along. And I would go, please stop. Please don't do that. But I'm going to talk about this. It's not the most important thing in the world, but it's cool. So it's from a different form of grammatical study. I'm not going to label it. I'm not going to talk to you about any of that, but it's called an interpersonal theme. And it's just an interesting way of linking ideas. So if I take two themes, right? I saw a movie yesterday, period. It had Keanu Reeves in it, period, right? I've got two pieces of information. Now I can link them together. I could say, I saw a movie yesterday, and it had Keanu Reeves in it. Okay, now, if I'm going to use an interpersonal theme, which tells me not just what the information is, but how to think about the information, how to judge the information. If I say, I saw a movie yesterday, unfortunately, it had Keanu Reeves in it, right? That tells you I'm not a big fan of Keanu Reeves. So, here's another example. Okay, he was wearing a tie with jeans. He thinks that's stylish. So if I use an interpersonal theme, I would say, he was wearing a tie with jeans. Apparently, he thinks that's stylish, right? And the addition of that word, apparently, what that says is, I'm kind of dishing on the guy. I'm kind of being snide. So I'm going to give you a joke here. It's a terrible joke, but do you know what a mansplainer is? I assume you know what a mansplainer is, right? It's a guy who's going to correct you on everything and thinks he knows everything about everything. So here's the joke. Where does a mansplainer get his water? From a well, actually. I know, terrible joke, right? But you've had this, right? When somebody says, yeah, I like that part at the end of that Tom Hanks movie where the girl goes back in time and meets up with him in the classroom. Well, actually, that doesn't happen, right? And the well actually is such a terrible interpersonal theme. People are really, really, I don't know, they get angry just hearing it. Because what it's saying is, I'm about to show you that you are completely wrong about something, and I'm going to make you feel stupid. All right, that's an interpersonal theme. Please let me know if I ever use it in class. Okay, so what does subordination do? Well, subordination gives a reason that two parts of a sentence are linked. And in almost all cases, it shows that one sentence is subordinate to the other. I know, big word, I keep throwing it at you. And if you're sitting there going, I don't know what you mean by subordinate. Well, I'm going to tell you. What is subordination? Any of you ever been in the military or know anybody in the military? Think about the word insubordination. Insubordination gets you in a whole lot of trouble in the military. And the reason it's going to get you in trouble is because there's an order of things, a hierarchy. So, if you are a general, you get to tell, I don't know all my orders. If you're a general, you get to tell a colonel what to do. And if you're a colonel, you get to tell a major what to do. And if you're a major, you get to tell a captain what to do. If you're a captain, you can tell a corporal what to do. And if you're a corporal, you can tell a private what to do. If a private was to say, hey, general, I'm not going into that war because I don't agree with it, that's insubordination. That's saying, dude, you're down here, he's up there. You don't get to talk back in that way. So insubordination in the military is saying, I don't recognize the order in the way that it should be, I am defying that order. Let's go back to my silverware drawer, right? If I open the silverware drawer and there's a knife with the little spoons, it's insubordination and it's going to bother me, okay? If there's a small fork in with the big forks, that's insubordination. It's going to bother me. So subordination is having things in the proper order. It's saying I recognize what's most important going down to what's least important, or I recognize the order that something goes in and the order that it has to go in. All right, so two sentences can be linked by a subordinator, but using the subordinator makes one of the sentences a clause. You see what I mean? If you add the subordinator, one of the sentences becomes less than a sentence. So, I thought I did a great job at the job interview. The interviewer didn't agree, right? That's two complete sentences. If I say, wow, I thought I did a great job at the job interview, the interviewer didn't agree. Do you see how there's a subordination there? Which is more important, what you think about how you did at the job interview, or what the interviewer thought? Probably the interviewer, right? Or this one, I thought Bird Box was a great movie. I have a broken nose. Do you remember Bird Box? Bird Box was the one where if you saw, it was kind of a ripoff of A Quiet Place, where if you saw the monsters, they'd kill you. So everybody's walking around with blindfolds. And for a while, people were emulating Bird Box. And we had a lot of people with broken noses. So I thought Bird Box was a great movie. I have a broken nose. That doesn't really make sense. If I say, because I thought Bird Box was a great movie, I now have a broken nose. I've put in two subordinators, because and now, and you can kind of read through that and tell the story, right? Obviously, I walked around, I didn't really do this, but somebody who thought Bird Box was a great movie and tried to walk around with a blindfold on probably walked into a wall. So that's what subordination does. Subordination is irreversible. So if I have two parts of a sentence that are linked by subordination, you can't just flip them and end up with the same meaning. That's what you can do with coordination. But with subordination, if you flip it, the meaning changes completely. So the order of the parts in subordination dictates the meaning. I teach English well because I write well. Yes, that's true. I write well because I teach English. You know what? That's also true. Both of those are true statements. Do they mean the same thing? Does it mean the same thing to say, I teach English well because I write well, or I write well because I teach English? No, they mean very different things. Here's another one. If I say, my wife loves me because I'm confident, that's true. I can also say, I'm confident because my wife loves me. That's also true. Do they mean the same thing? Certainly not. They are not opposites of each other, but they're different shadings of the same concept. So that's how subordination works. And each of these contains an argument. You're making a statement and you're giving a reason, but somebody could look at what you've written and say about what you said, I see what you said, but I disagree. So we're taking stances. What we're shooting for in college writing is to say things that are complex and complicated and that use words that give a sense of growth, development of ideas. All right, that's what we're shooting for in college writing. And that's quite enough of that. I realize this is all very thick stuff, and I could keep going about this because I love it, and I can just sense, even though I'm only recording this, I can sense that your eyes look like, So, we'll talk more about subordination when we get into the technique of concession. I love concession. And my eyes get all kind of glassy when I talk about concession. So we'll get there eventually and we'll use it as a technique. But anyway, thank you for listening.